Hello, everybody. I am back again, and I have a wonderful guest with me. He is the head coach of Chaminade High School, Ed Croson. I had the privilege of coaching with him for 1 year in 1995, but he has been coaching since 1978. So 40 some odd years, 43 years of coaching experience. Pierce College, Southern Utah. He has four LA City titles with Birmingham High School. He has one CIF championship with Chaminade High School and was part of the all-decade team between 2010 and 2019. So he has just a ridiculous amount of talent and experience. Coached Team USA, the 19 and under, from 2008, and then also in 2014. So he's got a ton of experience, and he has a ton of guys who got scholarships out of high school and several guys playing in the NFL. Coach Croson, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Tim. If I call you coach, it's because we coach together, and to me, once a coach, always a coach.
Right?
Yep.
Exactly.
Fun times.
So this podcast I'm doing is, interviewing guys like you. I mean, there's so many high school students that want to play in the NFL. They want to play in college, and they don't know the path. They don't know how to go about that process, and you have been dealing with that for 4 decades. So I'd like to open up the floor to you and say, when is the best time to start? How do you get these kids going from the beginning, and what college coaches are going to be looking for from the get-go?
One thing obviously is the measurables. And so it starts sort of, are you a recruitable athlete? And so do you have the measurables, height, weight, speed, those kind of things, toughness, those kind of things. As far as, when to start, it's never too early. I worked with a East German strength coach for many years, and he said the first start is between 4 and 5 years old, and start with gymnastics, something that's whole body, because by the time kids start thinking about playing college football, they're way past that. So, academically you're going to have to be able to be a college student and compete academically. And so you can't start too early when it comes to that. So, for example, I would say to young people, read and learn how to pull information off the written word. When we're at a college prep school, and when kids come by to look at the school, I'll usually ask them in the first minute or two, tell me the book you're reading right now. Now, if they have an answer, we talk about football. If they don't have an answer, then we only talk about the value of academics, because we won't be able to get them into our school. Not all schools are like that, but that gives an idea, of the point. And the point is that read something, do recreational reading, not just things off the internet and those kind of things. Everybody wants it fast now. So getting into college, you have to have over a certain GPA, but you also have to have a test score that matches. So you can have a 2.7 or 2.8 GPA, which is above the minimum. But if you have a real low SAT score, you're not going to be able to get into a place, and so you won't be recruited because of that. In fact, you can't take a trip unless you've had an SAT test taken. So it's a little different during COVID. So we're talking about times other than COVID. So I would say start with that. If you want to talk about physically how we advise our guys, I can jump into that a little bit too.
Yes, please.
Okay, so there's really 3 things. You talk about the measurables, and how do you achieve the measurables? Obviously, nothing beats genetics. But let's say you don't have the perfect genetics, or you weren't gifted that way, and still want to be a football player. How big you end up being matters. So we do some things with our kids. I learned this again from the East Germans. And at that time, the East Germans and Russians spent a lot of money on sports. And the guy we got came right when the wall came down. And so it was a long time ago. There's three aspects. There's diet, the work, and rest, and they all make a difference. So for kids that want to be football players, you have to be protein adequate. So if you wake up in the morning and have a bowl of Cheerios and roll through the day and have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at lunch, and maybe some hamburger helper for dinner, you better have genetics. Otherwise, you're not going to develop to your potential. So being protein adequate, there are some things we advise, and I advise this with young kids as they come through too. Eighth graders, they may go to our school, they may not go to our school, but we tell them, how do you harness your growth hormone? And that happens mostly, it's secreted when you sleep. And so we advise kids to drink a glass of milk before they go to bed. We do that with our players too. Obviously, it'd be better if you had something that was 7 grams of lean protein. Fish would be the best. 9 grams of low glycemic carbohydrates and 1.5 grams to 2 grams of monounsaturated fat. Okay, that requires a little more effort than just drinking a glass of milk. But drinking a glass of milk will balance your blood sugar so that when growth hormone hits your bloodstream, it can find its target cell. If you drink a sugar drink or something, just to gain weight, glass of orange juice, something like that, your body will produce insulin. Insulin is an indiscriminate transporter hormone, and it takes everything and shoves it into fat. Well, if you secrete a growth hormone and insulin shoves it into fat, it dies. Growth hormone has a 4 to 6 minute life. So it dies in body fat and it never hits its target cell. When we finish a workout, we give our kids a half of a nutritional bar that's balanced like that to balance their blood sugar, because 30 to 45 minutes after they work out is when that growth hormone is going to be secreted, and we want it to hit its target cell so that we maximize the workout. That's also a injury prevention thing. So that's just something that we do. When it comes to, so that would be a diet thing. When it comes to work, we would say to kids in adolescence, it's more important to be a competitor than necessarily a weightlifter. So we would advise them to play multiple sports. I've heard that on one of your previous podcasts, and I thought that was great advice. Even in baseball, we had a kid, Blake Rutherford, that was the number 18 pick in the Major League draft a few years ago. He was a free safety for us and a wide receiver, and he was a good one. And 4 Major League Baseball teams called me and wanted to know about him as a football player.
Wow.
But there's a lot of things that transfer. For example, we try to get our guys to wrestle because just the hand-to-hand combat and the competition of being out there on your own. If you're a defensive player or a lineman, we would say be a wrestler. If you're a perimeter player, we would say, include track in there somewhere, because top end speed makes a difference. If you are a offensive lineman or a tight end, basketball is another good one. So I think being a multi-sport athlete helps kids develop not only as a competitor, but there's a lot of crossover stuff, too. When it comes to rest, I think, especially with some of the top guys, families make a mistake with that. And we've seen it happen. You have the hot shot elementary school going into middle school athlete, and every coach wants a piece of this guy. And so the baseball coach wants him, the track coach wants him, the football coach wants him, everybody wants him. And so what ends up happening is these kids work year round. That has an effect on growth. East Germans taught us this. They found it out with gymnasts. They found out that when gymnasts rested, they grew, and that changed their body center, and it made them so they weren't effective gymnastically. In the Olympics, there's an age limit on gymnasts. They have to be over 16. The reason is, over 16, your body center may have changed. So what they do with these girls and the guys is they go every day, year round. That's why sometimes they get overuse injuries. So when you rest, you grow. And so we try to have our guys limit their work to no more than 8 events in a week. We try to get them to get 8 hours of sleep a night. That's becoming almost impossible because of social media and attraction to electronic devices. And then we have them take a 4-week uninterrupted rest per 12-month cycle. This is also challenging for, top-notch athletes. So you'll see some of these running backs, we've had them, that are great players, even in the ninth grade, that are almost fully grown because they never rested and don't rest. And so they end up being, 5'9" and a half instead of 6 foot. And difficult to recruit, because especially if they're a corner. What is a corner? A corner is a little squirty, fast guy that probably grew up in a neighborhood with a bunch of kids and was always playing with older kids, and just became more athletic because of his environment, and but never grew. So 6'7", 300-pound, okay lineman has a lot more recruitability than a 6'1", 300-pound great lineman, at our level. So those are a few tips just on growth. They all kind of work together, and this is for families. We talk to our parents about, helping your kid be protein adequate, helping them, shut down when it's time to shut down. Don't be, daddy coach year round, because that can be his worst enemy.
Right. So a fantastic lineman who might be 6 foot or 6'1" and 275, 300 pounds, even if he's fantastic, he may not be looked at by any Division I schools. He might have to look at Division II, Division III, NAIA, whatever. That might be more, his role, because you control your weight, you can control how strong you are, but you can't control how tall you are. So
if you don't take steps to grow, a perfect example is your school, USC. So we had a sophomore offensive lineman that was 6'5" and just a beast. Started, was a great player, Bar Milo, and SC was recruiting him, and he went down there and they measured you for a suit. And if you didn't have NFL measurements, they weren't looking for you. He had size 13 shoes. That was it. SC was done. Now, he started at center at Miami, so he ended up still playing in college because he was a great player. But to your point, exactly, there's something about the FBS, especially, where it's a lot about the measurables.
Right. Coach, you have been coaching at Chaminade for how many years now?
Well, I was there until 2000, then I went to Birmingham for 10 years, then I came back in 2009.
Okay, so what?
9 years. Oh, altogether probably 20 something years. Yeah, and then I was an assistant when we were working together and stuff for Rich.
Right. Since you've been there, obviously, Chaminade has been a school where numerous players are getting scholarships. And that didn't happen. Chaminade started in the 1950s, and there was no kind of scholarships for 50 some odd years. And then you and Rich Lawson came in, and Rich Lawson got a few guys out there. And then you came in and started getting a ton of guys out there getting scholarships. So you're used to talking to college coaches. What is the role? What is your role as you speak to college coaches and try and get some of these guys? I mean, because you have to talk to these coaches and they want your advice. What's your role?
You make a good point. One of the things also for kids is be in a school where athletes go to college. one of the things that we started doing is challenging our guys and playing a tougher schedule. Now that hurt at the beginning, and there was a learning curve, and so we took some lumps, but we started playing better teams. And so with better teams, kids, it's easier to evaluate players. So we played Adoree Jackson 5 times when he was in high school. So if you're a receiver and you play against Adoree Jackson and you route him up a couple times, pretty easy to evaluate that you can play at that level. My role ends up being now. This is different right now in COVID because seniors got an extra year in the NCAA a year ago, and so what was a 25-85 rule, guys would come in with 22, 21 scholarships to give. Last year, the guys would come in with 5 to 8 scholarships to give. So there's a little bit of a log jam. This benefited the junior colleges, but so but in normal times, and hopefully we're back to that soon. But in normal times in the playoffs, we would have, and this is at Birmingham and at Chaminade, we would have as many as 25 colleges on our sidelines watching practice in a given day,
Wow.
when all the colleges were out and everything else. So for most of the years, the schools came to us, but they only came to schools where there was recruitable athletes. So for example, I have a lot of friends from an older guy, so a lot of friends that are older guys that are in colleges, and I've had many friends that had a recruiting area of 80 schools, and they would recruit 12. They would recruit the schools. Yeah, there's only a certain amount of time on the road, and there's limited time on the road, especially in FBS and FCS. Once you get down into D2s and NAIA, which are still college football experience. My son played in the NAIA school, had a great experience in Kansas, and I'm glad he went to the Midwest and experienced a different part of the country. Those guys are limited because of funding, so they can't recruit all the time like the bigger schools. The bigger schools are limited by a certain amount of days on the road, and now all the coaches have to be on the road at the same time. Okay, so because of that, a lot more has evolved to film. So we do a few things. One, we talk to colleges and we try to get a feel. We have a list that we send out, and it goes all over the country every year with what we consider the projected level for our guys. And then, of course, we'll talk to we ask our guys, where do they want to go? And when they tell us where they want to go, we say, well, you're better off going to the 1-day camp or even a 3-day camp at the school you're interested in, just to get to know them, get a feel for it, get them to know you. And then of course, we're talking to schools all the time, and then we advise them on their highlight video, because it's once again, these schools will start off with 1,200 kids on their list, and it's a process of elimination to get down to 25 or less in COVID. So how do you do that? Well, the 5-star guy, everybody sees the 5-star guy. So if you're Sac State or UC Davis, or even Fresno State, which is a FBS school, and it's a 5-star guy. The 5-star guy wants Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, USC, and Michigan or something like that. Okay, so if you're in the Mountain West, you're probably not. Well, they know that. Okay, so there's a process of elimination, and so sometimes your window of introduction is very short. So we try to advise our guys on how to make their highlight video. For example, we tell them press box view only. It's sort of like a first date. I mean, you don't show your entire personality. If I showed my entire personality on my first date with my wife, who we've been married for 35 years, it would have gone nowhere. If she knew then what she knew now, yeah. So only show your best side. So we say press box view, 12 to 15 clips, only great things, starting with the best. Because if you don't grab their attention in the
Right
first
off the bat.
yep, you are on the cutting. Used to be DVDs. Okay, so I had friends that were GAs. Okay, so a GA wants to go out and hang out with his buddies. He doesn't want to look at all this film. So if something doesn't grab him in the first 3 plays, he says, out, next, out, next. Why? He's a kid. He wants to go have fun. So those are just a few things. Obviously, starting with the measurables, starting with solid academics, and then presenting yourself with your best foot forward.
Mm-hmm. Coach, grades. I know that they are incredibly important, and transcripts, no matter how good you are, they want to know, how your grades are. And when do you start enforcing or telling these kids how important grades are? At what age?
Okay, so we're in a little bit different boat at Chaminade because it's a college prep school. There's no general high school track. So when I, meet a kid, I ask them, tell me the book you're reading right now. And if they say they don't have an answer, we're done talking about football because they're not going to our school. I just talk about the value of education. So with the earlier, the better with that, and just recreational reading. And if you get into high school and you've been a struggling student, you're going to have test scores too. So we would say take a test prep class line. So our situation is different also because we have some high academic guys. The quarterback at Johns Hopkins, Ryan Stevens, that just threw for 486 yards in his first start as a sophomore. He's at Johns Hopkins. Okay, so he's a 4-point, I don't know what, at Chaminade, high test score guy. They have to have both. They have to have grades. You have to take college prep curriculum. So if you're in special day classes academically, you have to try to get out of that. And if not, you have to understand that you're going to have to go to junior college and you're going to have to prove it there. So where do you start? You start with reading something, and then start by showing up in class. Nowadays the colleges, they track your attendance, and if you're late, they probably did when you were at SC. But if you're late to class, they know that, and there's a consequence, for that, because they've invested in you and they have to keep you eligible too. You have to be able to make progress towards your degree. So, I would say, back to diet, I would say eat monounsaturated fat, like tree nuts, like avocados, like olives. This helps you grow dendrites. I mean, that is for thought. I mean, this is a great divider in our society, unfortunately, is quality of diet. And this separates some people from doing things like being successful in college. We talk about that a little bit with our guys, but really just put yourself in that game. If you want to go to college, you have to be a college student. So you got to get into classes where there's kids that are going to college and you can see what that competition looks like. And then you got to be a competitor.
Right.
And you got to start that young because your 9th grade grades count.
Right.
Yep.
Well, that leads me to my I guess my final comment is start early. Really start in 7th and 8th grade of studying your butt off. So because starting in 9th grade, you want to get great grades because those are going to count when the college coaches are going to be looking at you 4 years from now. Eat right, work your tail off athletically, and obviously stay out of trouble. And you can control your genetics at some point.
Not your genetics, but your genetic potential, and then eliminate the things that take you away from your goals. Okay. Right. So if you hang around with people that have similar goals,
Right.
so if your buddies are off, having a good old time instead of being in the weight room, understand that unless you have, tremendous genetics, which we all don't have that, uh, that's going to take you away from your goals, and it's going to be your fault that you don't make your goals.
Right. Right. Outstanding. Coach, fantastic talking to you and great advice. And I really appreciate you coming on the program today. I wish you great success in your season this year. And thank you so much for being part of this today. I think it'll go a long way with our student athletes.
Yeah, hey, great seeing you as always, and keep up the good work. I think this is a valuable and important topic you're talking about.
All right. Thanks. Ed Croson from Chaminade High School. Coach Croson, we'll talk to you soon, and I'm going to make it out to a game this year.
Look forward to seeing you.
All right, buddy.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.